some of my work and some ideas about the Rio Tinto. First of all, I would like to apologize because I have pharyngitis and a terrible sore throat, and then probably my voice will be running out after I start to talk, and after several minutes of speaking, probably my voice will be running out. In any case, as I said, it's my pleasure to be here, and I will start with the idea of the acidophiles, low pH loggers, Rio Tinto case, and the Mars connection, because from a point of view, it's important to include the connection with Mars with these Earth analogs, because sometimes we use the terms Earth analogs and extreme environments practically as the same, and it is not. Then when I propose this title, because I have been working in different kind of environments, but when I propose this title for the seminar, I decided to speak about Rio Tinto because I would like to value the extreme environment of Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto was one of the first environment of astrobiological interest that has been used as a laboratory for the analysis of protocols and tools for space missions. Experiments on extremophile microbiology have been carried out in this environment. I remember the startings with Dr. Ricardo Mills working on this extreme environment at the very beginning on the Autonomous University. Later, this environment was as well part of the Astrobiology Center, and several of us started to work in this environment, and I think is one of the most studied extreme environment and Earth analogs on Earth. As I said, from the experiments on extremophiles microbiology that have been carried out in this river, from other kind of works that has been as well accomplished in this extreme environment. We have tested protocols, tools, techniques for space missions. We have received a lot of international collaborations to study this environment. Also, I would like to comment as well that and to value that the great relevance in this case is the fact that it was the first site to be proposed as terrestrial analog in the Europlanet project, in the Europlanet proposal that most of you already know, which is Europlanet. The idea of including the extreme environments as facilities to receive external users in Europlanet came from Rio Tinto and from CAP. I remember the first meeting with at that moment the coordinator of Europlanet, Michel Blanc. Then when I proposed to include extreme environments was really a problem because it's not so easy to calculate the cost and the for visiting this kind of environments. And we decided to include a working package about Earth analogs. At that moment, I was the coordinator. Europlanet was right now is the fourth bid of Europlanet that is funded. We have been refunded 3 times. And I resigned to be the coordinator in this last one. Now is the University of Bologna, which is the coordinator, but from the very beginning, it was coordinated by CAP, by Centro of Astrobiology. And I said before, we normally use both terms, extreme environments and terrestrial analogs, as the same, and it's not the same, because all the Earth analogs normally are extreme environments, but not the opposite. Some extreme environments are not Earth analog. What I would like to explain today is why we, and this is why I'm going to start precisely with this point, with this the connection of Mars. Why we, I have some problems to pass, right. Why we called Earth analog to Rio Tinto. But first, I would like to introduce all of you the Rio Tinto. Is located at the southwest of Spain, southwest of the Iberian Peninsula, quite nearby of the border with Portugal. It's a very long river, practically more than 100 kilometers, with, as you said on the first slide, in the first picture, with a very dark red color. It's high metal contents, really very low in pH, but with a very strong and very important biodiversity, wild biodiversity. I said that very high in metal because practically the whole periodic table and metals in very high concentrations are present in its waters, and as well the pH, the mean pH, this 100-kilometer river is around 2, but some of the stations are 0.8, which is very acidic. Okay, this is the stream environment that I'm going to talk about today, and the Mars connection. I'm going to start with the Mars connection because, paraphrasing to Dr. Kamara and co-workers in their article entitled "A Coupled Atmosphere Global Climate Model of Early Mars," a cool and wet scenario for the formation of water channels that was published in 2020, Martian water channels are considered evidence of a climate warm enough to allow the existence of long-term fluvial systems on early Mars during the Noachian and Hesperian boundary. Although different authors reported neutral to alkaline conditions for underground Mars, the upper part of the planet interior the upper part of the planet interior has certainly been affected by circulating and downwelling of low pH and oxidizing solutions, which is, I think, is very brave to say, but I will present some clues and some ideas about this. It is generally agreed that a dense CO2 dominant atmospheres was necessary in order to keep early Mars warm and wet. That could mean that saturated water solutions, which would behave as an acidic solution, could run on the Mars surface. Something which is really controversial is the preservation of biosignatures on Mars. Is largely associated, as I indicated in my slide, is associated with extensive deposit of clays under mild early Noachian conditions. They were followed by a widespread precipitation of acidic sulfate considered adverse for biomolecular preservation. But in any case, as was published by Mustard and co-workers in 2013, we have a paradox, because we know that life can survive in very extreme acidic environments on Earth. We have really good results on the preservation of organics as well, on, for example, in Rio Tinto, and other very acidic environments. Then this controversy of very acidic sulfate-rich as avoiding the possibilities of biosignatures to be preserved has to be revised. Starting from the very beginning. Other results that indicate this possible acidic environment on the surface of Mars, apart from what previously commented, there's data from several missions that probe acidic conditions on very early Mars. This is the landing site for the NASA's NASA's rover Opportunity at Meridiani Planum. In the image, we can see a series of boulders or rock formations that were the first analysis point for the rover. Some of these boulders, for example, one of these that is represented in this image, it can be seen the El Capitán. In Spanish, El Capitán, in English, the captain. El Capitán was the first name given to one of these points that were analyzed, and was possible to see really clear sedimentary features and multi-layered formations of an environment that must have been a shallow ocean could be observed. It's in this, for example, in this image, it's possible to see the multi-layered deposits that represent the positional sedimentary process in this area. But in this image, it can be seen a series of crystals, the positional salt minerals that formed within rocks that sit in a briny water when the crystals later disappear, either by the erosion and by dissolving in less salty waters. The void is depositional, very small fine particles. But in the small image, these round particles, the size of blueberries practically, are embedded in the outcrop in the left image. From shape alone, these spherules might be formed from volcanic eruptions, from lofting of molten droplets by a meteor impact, or from an accumulation of minerals coming out of a solution inside a porous water-soaked rock. Opportunity observations reported that the spherules are not concentrated at a particular layer in the outcrop. That means that the volcanic or impact origin theory could be not the real truth. It seems like a depositional and dryness process that concentrated this salt on the surface. Following this idea, these plots or spectra show that a rock David McKittrick near the Mars Exploration Rover Opportunity landing site at Meridiani Planon has higher concentrations of sulfur and bromide than a nearby patch of soil nicknamed tarmac. These data were taken by Opportunity's alpha particle X-ray spectrometer. Both tarmac and McKittrick are located within the small crater where Opportunity landed. But the different compositions indicated that any kind of difference in the mineral composition was important. Then the mission took this Moswauer spectrum of El Capitan, and that demonstrated the presence of jarosite. Jarosite as one of the main components of this area. As we will see later, this is one of the main components we find in Rio Tinto, in the Acidophiles River. Jarosite is an iron, sodium, potassium sulfate with a very complex chemistry that needs particular conditions to precipitate in an environment. These conditions are that it needs liquid water, acidic conditions on that liquid water, and the presence of those metals in solution. Those analyses reported us that El Capitan had a long ago acidic conditions similar what we see right now in Rio Tinto. Endurance crater was the second point of study of Opportunity. Opportunity spent about half a year exploring Endurance history of water at Meridian Planon. Endurance provided mission scientists with a cross-section of the bedrock of this Mars location. When interesting, it's possible to see the rubber wheel tracks when entering the crater. Here we can see the Barnes Cliff inside Endurance, the boulders in the crater ring. Again, it's possible to detect the multi-layer deposits that seems to indicate it. It was published in scientific journals. Then the multi-layer structure was recognized as well. This is a PanCam image that was taken by Opportunity and with the idea of to do a study of the profile of this boulder. Liquid water seems to be episodic. Nature wasn't permanently present in this area, with floods periodically washing over the landscape and then drying up again. Sulfates in Endurance evaporate outcrops shallow. The sea was probably rather acidic in nature. And if we see this graph, shows how elements change in composition along the slope of Endurance crater, along the slope of the boulder that I mentioned previously. The data were taken by the Mars Explorer Rover Opportunity alpha particle X-ray spectrometer, and then it's possible to see that while chlorine levels were found to significantly increase with crater depth, magnesium and sulfur concentrations significantly decreased. Because these latter two elements decrease in parallel, they probably represent magnesium sulfate that precipitate out of the water. This means that, again, with some indications of these acidic conditions appears on the boulder in endurance crater. The same with blueberries. Blueberries found it in endurance crater as well. And here the graph shows two spectra of outcrop regions near the Mars Exploration Rover Opportunity Land Design again. This is the same area. The blue line shows data for a region dubbed berry bowl, which contains a handful of the spheres-like grains double blueberries. In the opposite, the yellow line represents an area called empty next to the berry bowl that is devoid in berries. This means that the difference is that in the second one, the berries were not present. Not present. Berry bowl spectrum, as you can see on the image, still shows typical outcrop characteristics, but also exhibit an intense hematite signatures, seen as a magnetic sextet. Hematite is an iron-bearing mineral, often formed in water. These spectra were taken by the Mosauer spectrometer, and the hematite as well is well recognized on the acidic Spanish River. And finally, I am presenting here a model developed by my colleague and published in 2004, Alberto González Fairen. Then he proposed an acidic ocean in the early Mars. This is a quite interesting paper, and I recommend you to read about, because basically he demonstrated in this paper that the conditions were quite acidic due to the formation of sulfuric acid from photolysis of SO2, and that these acidic conditions weather the surface of the Mars and then finally became like what we could consider like very old acidic river. All this information, I think it can be concluded that one of the Mars sedimentary rocks that were formed in acidic conditions. This is the importance of some acidic terrestrial analogues, for example, as Rio Tinto, and the important submarine hydrothermals. So Rio Tinto, the origin of Rio Tinto is precisely this hydrothermalisms, which originated what we call the Iberian Pirite belt, which after oxidation generated the Rio Tinto ecosystems. Going a little bit in detail, here I summarize the conditions of Rio Tinto. As I said before, pH mean, the mean of the pH of the river is 2, but I insist some of the sampling stations are lower than 2, 0.8, 0.5. The concentration of metals are really high. For example, iron can be as high as practically 20 grams per liter, and other metals accompany this. After studying this extreme environment for several years, we can summarize here in this slide the biodiversity that is present on this river, starting from cheminotrophs, the inorganic eating bacteria that basically the metabolism of this bacteria start with the pyrite, the sulfur, ferrous sulfur mineral that after oxidation originated two very important elements that is the main components of the river. By one side, sulfuric acid, which means low pH, very low pH, and the second one is the ferrous iron is oxidized to ferric iron. This means red color. This is the two elements that characterize the river. Then the river probably is the peak of the iceberg of a really big bioreactor underneath the surface. These cheminotrophic bacteria running these metabolic reactions are, for example, acetobacillus ferroxidans, or more represented Leptospirillum ferroxidans. But as well, as I will show later, very briefly later in some slides, we have a very important community of photosynthetic primary producers, Chlamydomonas, some decomposers, Acidophyllum, Candida, consumers, and some protozoa, then we published in in 2002, we published a paper with the big biodiversity that were presented in Rio Tinto. All the red strains here are strains that were isolated, identified in Rio Tinto. Then, as you can see, practically in Rio Tinto, we have representation from most of the groups of the tree of life. And stromatolites, in order to be very fast, because I would like to comment some of the latest slides, very brief. These are some images from Rio Tinto, iron stromatolite structures, depositional that after dryness process became very hard. This means that seems to be rocks, but if you go through these terrains, you probably will be slippery and fall down because it's a sedimentary processes. Some of the rocks of this area are very oldest iron bioformations, more than really several hundreds thousand years that has been dated. This means that this ecosystem is natural. This means that before human being to be exploiting the mine in this area, there was already the acidic river under the positional formation of these bioformations with acidic, very iron high concentrations on the deposition of the salts on the river. But I insist, is before human being to be there. This means that this is a natural environment. We can compare with the very old formation of Pilbara. And very briefly, this is the ecosystem that is represented in Rio Tinto. Rio Tinto has a very oxic part in the upper part of the water column, but a very important anoxic part on the just 10 centimeters below the surface of the water. We can see sulfur oxidation processes, sulfur reduction processes, iron oxidations, iron reduction, some of for example, acidophiles, taking advantage of the respiration of the oxygen for the composition of organic matter. I mean, very complex ecosystems with as well sulfate reducing bacteria. With a very important ecological paradox, because as you have seen here, most of the isolates and representatives in the high number are bacteria and archaeobacteria, but a lower number is eukarya. But these eukarya, as are bigger than the bacteria, are supporting the bigger quantity of the biomass. Then we have acidophilic diatoms, for example, or acidophile protists, really big biodiversity. A colleague of mine, Mustafa Malki, demonstrated the double behavior of metabolics of acid to acidus peroxidum, because after putting the bacteria under oxygen conditions, he demonstrated that this bacteria was able to oxidize ferrous iron to ferric, and just the opposite when the oxygenic part of the atmosphere was removed, and to introduce in a very complete anoxic environment. This means that the double behavior of this bacteria represents the double behavior of the Rio Tinto ecosystems, with a very important anoxic components just very centimeters below the water of the surface of the water of the river. The depositional process of the minerals are really easy to see and to demonstrate it, because here, for example, we have a very important precipitation of iron minerals. And then this demonstrated that the iron plays a very important role in the Rio Tinto ecosystems. 80% of the prokaryote biodiversity is related with the iron cycle, as I commented before. But iron can be used as well as, for example, electron donor in respiration, electron acceptor in anaerobic respiration, control the pH, because the chemistry of the iron is really complex, but we know that it's a buffer, a very important buffer that control the pH on the river. And as well, something which is really important is the protect from UV radiation and photooxidation. Some interesting depositional pictures from the river that it's possible to see, for example, this depositional, that is very old deposits with different environments on the river. Some very important projects has been run in the river, as I said at the very beginning. Just to mention a couple of them, the Marte project. We play with the Mars word in Spanish, Marte, for Mars Analog Research Technology Experiment project. That was a project and a step field experiments that was coordinated by NASA, by Carol Stoker from Ames Research Center in California. And the idea, the objectives of this project was to search for and characterize subsurface life, completely isolated from the surface of the environment, to perform a high fidelity simulation of a robotic Mars drilling mission, and to demonstrate the drilling sampling was possible. The idea was during the first years to drill several hundred meters on the area to study the biospheres underneath the surface, and during the last year to simulate a possible drilling project in a Mars surface without the intervention of humans on the field. Basically, it was managed completely in stress conditions. Cores in plastic liners they were cut and labeled. They were managed in anaerobic box, and they're completely isolated and sterile conditions. Several techniques were applied to study the cores and the different samples, and we obtained very interesting results with some interesting images. For example, this image from a scanning electron microscopy. This is a sample that was taken 162 meters below the surface. We studied the iron content, the attachment of the bacteria to these cores in order to study the interaction between the bacteria and the core. And we obtained a lot of different results that have been recently published. For example, the geomicrobiology, metabolic activities along the depth of the core, and different gases, ions profiles, again with the depth of the core. After all results has been recently published by Dr. Mills and co-workers in environmental microbiology, the geomicrobiological model of the different biochemical cycles operating in the depth subsurface of the Iberian Peritic Belt, with really complex metabolic reactions that are being undergone in the subsurface. UV radiation as well, we were able to demonstrate it that when we expose some bacteria isolated from Rio Tinto to UV radiation without the protection of the ferric iron, the damage and the recovery of the bacteria was completely zero, but this was not the same when we exposed these bacteria in acidic conditions with iron in ferric iron in solution. And as well, we ran another experiment that we exposed some Acidophiles ferroxidin isolated from Rio Tinto, protected in a very small cake of mineral inside one of our facilities here at Astrobiología Center in Madrid, to the Mars surface conditions. These conditions were very harsh. We put in the very harsh condition on Mars, we mimic the atmospheric composition of Mars, the pressure, the temperature, the radiation, and we use Deinococcus radiodurans, that is not an acidic bacteria. If not, is really well reported bacteria that resist very harsh conditions of radiation and so on, and a very weak bacteria from Rio Tinto, which was Acidobacillus ferroxidin. The results, because I am practically run out of time, but the result was that including the very weak bacteria, were able to resist depending on the depth in which the bacteria was settled, and then to expose to the conditions of Mars. Some interesting results that I would like to comment is that, for example, very few millimeters of Mars regolith are enough to protect against UV radiation. But something which is important, and we were able to see along the column of this small cake, is that due to the production of superoxides and some reactive ions and chemicals, the damage going down was due to the chemistry, not to the radiation. But in any case, most of the bacteria, in the case of Deinococcus, practically 100% of the bacteria was able to resist. But in the case of the Acidobacillus fluoroxylans, which is a chemotrophic bacteria that is characterized by, for being very weak bacteria, was able to survive. And just to finish, I would like to comment some words about Europlanet, because as probably most of you already know, that Rio Tinto is one of the facilities that is able to visit completely for free, covered by Europlanet. Europlanet started with an FP6 program before FP7 program, and is structured in different. This is the reason why this project was called research infrastructure, because it's composed by different working packages. This means we are running scientific networking, outreach, different kind of virtual observations, but as well some works through joint research activity with the idea to develop new models and new sites for being offered to the public, to the external users, to other scientists, to cover for free the visits. We were working, for example, at Choteljerit with very important results on that field trip, and we validated Rio Tinto as an Earth analog. We use Rio Tinto in the framework of Europlanet for running some simulation of manned missions to Mars. For example, in this case, ESA, the European Space Agency, was simulating the interaction with an astronaut with a rover on Rio Tinto on Rio Tinto area. At the very beginning, we have these 5 sites to visit for external users for free, as I said before. Right now, we have different ones. This is the first bit of the project that was offered to the public, to the external users. And right now, we have other different ones. For example, we have the Andes on Argentina. We have a basin in China. We have Greenland, the positional basin as well. We have Icelandic environment, and as well Rio Tinto in Spain. Then, if some of you are interested in visiting this Rio Tinto area and to follow some of your research in this site, it's possible to visit. Just visit the page of the Europlanet Society, of the Europlanet project, and you will see the different environments that you can visit. I invite some of you to present a proposal. Right now, the actual proposal is closed, but we are probably open a new call to visiting these sites. I insist for free, because Europlanet will be covering all the expenses of the external users to visit, and I invite all of you to present a proposal to visit Rio Tinto. The exito's of this working package about analog with the European Commission was really high, because, for example, we in some of our missions, this is the list of the different press release, mass media covering the work that we were developing on these sites. And with the idea of having some time, I will stop here, and I will leave 20 minutes for questions, as normally as normal here in the European Astrobiology Institute seminars.